Had as much of you as I can take. I'm so done, so over being afraid. I've gone through the motions, I've been back and forth. I know that you're thinking you've heard this before. I don't know how to say it, so I'm just gonna say it, yeah. Fear you don't own me, there ain't no room in this story. And I ain't got time for you telling me what I'm not, like you know me. Well, guess what? I know who I am, I know I'm strong, and I am free, got my own identity. So fear you will never be welcome here. Take a minute, let it settle in. You probably never saw it coming. Something's gotta give, so I give up you. Oh, there's no room for you here, yeah, I've had enough. The no vacancy.
Well, greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. I've prepared the virtual tea. I've fluffed up the pillows to make them comfortable for you. This is Carol Moulton, and this is Tea Time with Carol. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. And this is our inaugural radio program, and we are going to be speaking to you on a number of different subjects as we go along. But today I thought it would be impactful to talk about fear. And our theme song that I selected is called The Breakup Song. And if you didn't catch all of the words, she is talking about breaking up with fear, and which I thought was really a nice way to look at it. You know, fear you don't own me, telling me what I'm not, like you know me. Well, guess what? I know who I am. I'm strong. So that's Francesca Battistelli, and that's our theme song for for the series that we're going to do about fear. We're going to be talking about fear on a number of different levels for a while, and I hope you will join me for all of them. And if you stick with me today, I promise I'm going to give you 3 keys that you'll be able to put in your toolbox, tools for your toolbox that will help you with fear. We've got a special guest today. I'll be bringing her in a second to talk about certain aspects of fear. She's someone that I have known for quite some time. She has a magnificent story, very successful international speaker, and I think you'll enjoy listening to her. But I just want to give you a little bit of an introduction about me. I don't know if I even said my name. That might be helpful. I'm Carol Moulton, and I am a motivational speaker, coach, and mentor. And I've been around for a minute or two, so I've got some things that I think I can share with you. I'm an ordained minister. I don't know if you care about my credentials or not, but I just thought I would share that with you. I practiced law for a number of years. I worked for the federal government in the EEO and diversity space. And but I'm also very interested in personal development and how we can overcome the things that keep us stuck. And one of the things that I think really keeps us stuck is fear. There is a professor of mythology at Sarah Lawrence College. Don't worry, there's a point to this. I'm going to bring it all in a second. His name is Joseph Campbell, and he wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And this book was considered so important by George Lucas, the man who's made millions of dollars off of Star Wars, that he created a whole line of movies, the Star Wars, I don't know, Star Wars 8, 9, 10, and, just based on this one character, the hero character that presents throughout mythology. But one of the things that Professor Campbell says that I think is important for us today, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And I thought, wow, that's really heavy. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. So my question for you today, I have a couple of questions for you today. But my first question for you today is, what are you afraid to enter? What's holding you back? What are you afraid of? Now, there are two types of fears. There's the external, which we think of as lions and tigers and bears. Oh, my. And those are the obvious kinds of, the external kinds of fears. And then there are the internal fears, the fear of failure, fear of looking bad, and I think a lot of our fears focus on that. There's the fear of the unknown, and there's also the fear of success. So I'm going to pause now and bring in our speaker. Her name is Crizia Salgado. Crizia hails from Boston. She's a native Bostonian, and she's of Puerto Rican and Mexican parents. She received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Hampshire College. She studied international music, and she minored in gender studies. She considers herself a motivational catalyst. I love that. Someone who's, I know in a car you have a catalyst, some kind of converter, So if you're doing that kind of work with people, where you motivate people to, and you're the catalyst to motivate people, I think that's pretty darn awesome. She is speaking all around the world about how to change your life and how to get past the obstacles that stop you. Crizia grew up, she had a very difficult upbringing, and I'm going to let her tell her exact story. And I also will ask her to share with us how she overcame and how she's able to help people now. So, Crizia, are you able to join us?
I am.
Oh, thank you, and welcome so much for coming in and joining us today. I gave you a little bit of an introduction. I hope I didn't leave anything out. I know that a lot of folks call you Chris, and affectionately I'd like to do that if you don't mind.
Yeah, please do so.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, I know, from talking to you and from our relationship, we go back a bit. We met at a class a year or so ago, or two, I think, ago. And since that time, we've shared quite a bit, and you told me a lot about your upbringing. And can you share with the audience a little bit about you and your early days and some of the challenges that you faced?
Absolutely. But before I begin, I want to say really thank you. It is such an honor, and I am incredibly happy all at the same time while I'm extremely nervous to be on the radio worldwide. So I am incredibly blessed and very honored that you have brought me in to be featured onto this program. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. And second thing, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So a little bit about me. As Carol was saying, yeah, so I was born and raised in the heart of Boston. And my parents are from Puerto Rico and Mexico, so I am of Latino origin. And so, yeah, my background, I'm probably, I always joke around saying like, oh, my life has always been sort of like a toilet paper, in the sense that it keeps going and going and going. So it's always sort of a metaphor, trying to explain to people, so like, yeah. And so, yeah, it all started with, I would say, let me start off with, I'm going to start with, I'm going to say around 6 or 7 when my parents got a divorce. And it all just went downhill from there. And basically, in a nutshell, it's just that I grew up in, from between the ages of 7 until 12 years old before I got taken into foster care system here we have in the United States, is I survived the streets, literally. because my options were either to stay home and starve or go out in the streets and do something. And I found, and while I was out in the streets, I found my survival mechanism, and that was I ended up being in a gang. I used drugs, I did alcohol, I did all that. This is all between the ages of 8 and 12. And then from 12, I was taken into foster care. I was there from 12 to 18. So eventually, I believe I went from home to home at 4 different homes, yeah. And from there, I'm going to say that I really struggled. I really struggled with depression. I even attempted suicide at 18. And thankfully, fortunately, I did not succeed. Otherwise, I would not be here. And yeah, it was quite a difficult that life threw circumstances my way. It was very hard. And then I eventually dropped out of high school because I said, I can't take this anymore. I can't. This is too much for me. And so, but you know what though? And then when I was in one of my jobs that I was working and I left school, I said to myself, if I ever plan to do anything with my life, I really have to go back, even though I didn't want to. So I ended up going back to school and I got my GED. And so, and I, even though I graduated from college, I was just still struggling internally because there's so much. I was just like, why did this happen? Why did this happen? I was just so much filled with anger all these years as to why did that happen? Why did this happen to me? And I couldn't understand all these things happening to me. And the time that really shook me up, and it wasn't until at 25, it really shook me up. And what shook me up, it was a severe car accident. And as many people know, Native Bostonians are notoriously known to jaywalk. Well, then, I did not jaywalk. Now, at this time, I was living in New York City. And in New York City, and of course, you don't jaywalk. So I did not jaywalk. I did not. And so I was 2 minutes late for work. And I was running across a crosswalk. And next thing you know, the car completely opposite end runs over his light, hits me on the crosswalk, and drags me from one street to the other side of the street. And I did not wake up until the next day. And that's when I woke up alone. And that's when I realized that I needed to change my life. So and it goes from there. So that's a little brief background.
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, we only got to 25, and that was, an incredible amount. But let me go back a little bit. That had to be really, really difficult. First, your parents breaking up, and then it sounds like they weren't able to take care of you. So your choice was, either staying home or the streets, and you selected the streets, which for a lot of people would be a very scary kind of place. How did you maneuver that, or did you have fear with respect to making that kind of a choice, and how did you manage that?
Absolutely. So at the time, I didn't really look at it as fear. It was more like I had to do this. I have to. There's no other option. There's no other choices. And so fear wasn't in the present, it was sort of in the background. Like, yes, I had a little fear on how to go about this, but I also knew that I would be taken care of, whether it's, the boys in the gang, which, by the way, I was the only female in the gang.
Wow.
Yeah, that's minor detail.
Wow.
And I just knew that they would take care of me, because even before I got into the gang, they always took care of me. They knew how difficult it was for me and my mother. It was just my younger brother and my mother. And my mother at the time, she's not mentally stable. Mm-hmm. So I had to one of my speeches, I called it a childhood spent parenting. And I specifically talk on that, wow, there were days where either I stay home and be the parent at such a young age or go out in the streets. So back to your question is, yes, there was some fear, but at the same time, I had no choice. So I had to keep going forward, and I knew that I would be taken care of, even if it was the right thing or not.
It's interesting that, you can park fear, because for a lot of people, I don't know if they would see it in the same way that, well, let me choose the street. The streets are so scary for a lot of people, but you were able to overcome any trepidation or any second thoughts about that to feel like, well, of the two choices that I have, that's the better one. So, if I was scared, forget that. I'm choosing to go where at least I know I'll be taken care of. And then you mentioned attempting suicide at 18. Can you tell us what brought you to that point?
Absolutely. So by that point, I had dealt with, again, being in foster care, in foster homes. Now, for the most part, I was blessed. I was very blessed, especially my last home. I was really, really blessed. I ended up living with this elderly, and at the time, she was in like late 60s, and it was just me and her. But I was so severely depressed. I was constantly being diagnosed with multiple personalities. I was diagnosed with severe depression. I was diagnosed with all kinds of stuff. And I just couldn't take it because I just felt like my head was about to explode, depression. I felt like my voices in my head at the time. I was just like, what is this? What's going on? I'm just like, I just want to die. I just don't want to do this anymore. No one cares about me. If my mom can even take care of me, it's like, nothing. I just didn't want to do it anymore. But thankfully, I just will always look back at this one high school counselor. Oh, I will always remember her. But even though she tells me to this day, she's like, oh, man, I thought I lost you. And it was just like all the pressure that I brought upon myself. And it's not on purpose. Like, today I feel like putting pressure on myself. It wasn't like that. It was just like, everything combined. It's like, why all of this is happening? Why is this happening to me? And I couldn't understand why. And I remember at 16, picking up my first book called Happy, and I was just like, I need to find out why. Mm-hmm. And since then, I got addicted to personal development. I picked up every book that I can think of, every psychology book, and just understand why all these things are happening to me. So and that's what led me to I can't do this anymore. I tried reading books. Okay, I have to do this way, and it's like it doesn't work. And it brought me over. It pushed me over, and I'm just like, okay, I'm done. And that's what happened at 18.
Well, this is really interesting. It sounds like you were at the very, very lowest point that anybody can be at, and there's been a lot of suicide talk about suicide and people trying to extend more services to folks who need it, who are at that point and don't know where to turn. Now you talk about you picked up a book, but how did you get from making an actual attempt to picking up a book and saying, okay, happy, yes, okay, yes, I choose that. How did you bridge that? That's a big gap.
Yep. So at 16, so when I came to suicide, I was 18. So at 16, I chose to pick up a book. By this time, I was still sort of questioning life, still wondering, why are these things happening to me? So I picked up a book. I was like, is this real? Does this really exist? Does happy really exist? I don't think so, but I'm going to still pick it up anyway and try to find out. That was my mentality back then. I was just like, well, life sucks, then you die. Even though that's not how I live. Just to be clear, I don't think of it that way. I do not think of it that way right now. But that was my mentality back in high school. Sort of life sucks, then you die. And so, and from that point, from 16 to 18, there was just so many obstacles that kept coming to me. And just like, why is this not getting better? Yes, I had a few friends, but it wasn't like I wasn't happy. It's like, well, I've always told myself in high school saying, no one loves me. Yes, I had this one high school counselor, and she worked so hard to show me. But at the time, I was so blinded by my anger. I was so angry with life. And I still somehow was just sort of angry. I'll be honest, even anger really helped me survive life. At the time, it wasn't the most effective way to live life, but it was helpful to me. You know, it's what got me through high school. It's what got me through certain kind of relationships. It got me through anger. And at that point, when it became too much, when I became too angry, then when I really pushed people out of my life without, sort of admitting at the time, I said to myself, okay, this needs to stop. And that's when I became extremely depressed. And that's when I said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I got to go. So that's where the gap is.
I see. I got you. Okay. So now, you get requests, I think, like every day or so to come and speak, particularly to young people who you really connect with on a real, gut kind of level. How did you make that transition? I understand that you decided the accident played a big part in sort of turning things around. But how did you get from that and wanting to, find your happy to wanting to make a contribution to others and to reach out? How did you get there?
Yep. So at 25, after I had graduated from college, I said to myself, because of how I grew up in Boston, because of the past experience in Boston, I said to myself that I would never go back to Boston. So I ended up living in New York City. And as you know, as I mentioned earlier, New York City, that's where the accident happened. That's when the accident occurred. And it wasn't until the next day when I woke up for the first time in 25 years, and my friends kept warning me. People kept warning me, Trizia, if you don't change, you're going to be alone. You're going to be alone. And I'm like, whatever. What are you talking about?
Right.
And so finally, when that accident happened to me, it was an incredibly blessing in disguise. I woke up and I couldn't turn. And at this time, and I was living by myself in a studio in New York City, and I had a friend from college come stay with me for I don't know, for like a month or two or something to help her transition from her place and so forth. And even though I was helping her, she was staying with me. But for the first time, I woke up and I felt alone. Oh my God! I'm trying very hard not to cry right now because I just got really present to how deep and how in depth what that feeling was. And I was like, so this is the feeling that people were telling me, and this is the feeling that people were warning me about. If you don't change, you're gonna be alone. And so when I woke up, I literally had no one to call, no one. And so even though I was living with a friend from college, I didn't feel safe enough to call her because I was like, oh, she probably must be pissed off at me for all the things I've done or said or something. And so when I felt that for the first time that I successfully, and of course I'm being facetious, that I successfully pushed everyone out of my life, I said, no, I'm done. And I stopped being angry. And so from that moment on, I said slowly, at the time, because of the car accident, the car stopped, and, I was assigned to a therapist because of the whole car situation. And so I said to the therapist, I said, I know I was angry, but I really don't want to go back there. She's like, oh, you're not. Oh, you're not. There's no way. And I was like, I don't believe that. I'm done being angry. She's like, oh, you are. You won't. And from that moment on, I was working with her very closely on a weekly basis to change my actions to match, to becoming the new person who I am working to this day, to be the person who I am today. And so on a weekly basis, okay, smile more. Okay, got it. Be friendly. Say hi to people. Good morning or something. It's something so little, but it makes a big impact. And, of course, I continue reading my psychology books and trying to understand what this happened, why, I had limited resources in my upbringing. And each time when there's a course there, I was like, I got it. I've taken it, And in each moment, I felt better and better and better. I was like, oh, my God, this is amazing. And every year I've always found myself taking more and more personal development courses and more. I saw myself being super friendly and outreaching to people. I'm just like, oh, this is amazing. And to answer your question back to how make the jump, I volunteered. I volunteered in adolescent organizations, and I slowly began telling my story. It's like, oh, I used to be that way. It's not cool. It doesn't help you to be that way. I get it, but it doesn't, trust me. I pushed everybody out of my life. And then slowly, little by little, people kept asking me, can you tell your story? Can you share your story? And that's how it began. So.
Interesting. Well, let me remind our listeners that you're listening to Women of Essence broadcast radio and TV network. Chris, this is an amazing story. I mean, it's just powerful to listen to how you came from, so far, and the fact that, I think there are a lot of people who would have felt very justified in saying, well, I've been through so much, now it's all about me, all about me, all about me. And, for you to continually want to reach out to help others, I think is a great testament to your heart and the faith, that God has given you. Now, I know that there's another piece that you're working on where you've identified a number of things that keep us kind of stuck, and one is a fear of success, and I think you've kind of worked in that area a little bit. You want to talk to us a bit about that and what you've done with that?
Oh, fear of success. Okay.
That's a biggie.
I can go. It is a big one. How about this? I'll ask back the question. What specific area did you want me to touch on? Because is there a certain project?
The project that you've got going on right now that you've just rolled out.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm just like, I have a few projects. Yeah, the book the autobiography that I'm coming out with. So that's a project. But I believe that the project that you're referring to is the brand new course that I actually just rolled out myself, Wealth and Mindset.
Yes.
And basically I figured, I even though personal development is my area of expertise, where sort of I focus on who you're being in this world, I also decided, I said, you know what? There are other areas of life that we all need to approach. It's not just personal development. Yes, it's a very big one, a very important one, but also there are other areas of life. And so I chose to come out with a brand new course, Wealth and Mindset. And basically why I did this is because there's a I see it every day. People are questioning, not questioning, but just sort of not having the resources, the funds, have access to them. They don't have access to that. So I said, how can I teach something and have it easily accessible to everyone? And so I rolled out this course saying okay, this is, it's very exciting, very exciting. I actually took a break from personal development just to focus on this course. And it was scary for me. It was a huge, huge leap. I said, who am I to be coming out with this course? It was a really big, scary move for me. But then I said to myself, no, you know what? As much as people are going to criticize me, but you know what though? At least I'm trying to do something. And so I said to myself, you know what? These are the things that I know that has helped me. So why not give it to others and pass it on to generations? Because, and as I mentioned earlier, because of my limited upbringing, I did not have the resources. And so it took me over a decade to finally gather all of the resources that I finally have now. And so I said, if I can do this coming from nothing, I can just totally replicate this and teach it to others. And that's why I decided to do this and sort of start teaching people sort of from the mindset to setting the intention to, just finding different ways to build wealth. And that's the part we're just so excited. And even though I'm still scared talking about it.
Well, but you push past the fear. I think that's the point. I think for a lot of people, you find a lot of excuses to not do something. We don't always identify fear as fear, but you come up with, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time, I'll do it tomorrow, I really want to finish this Candy Crush game that I'm on. I'm on level, 25,000, and if I stick with it, I can get to 40 tonight. I mean, there are all kinds of things, but we don't recognize it as, I'm afraid of what people are going to say. I'm afraid it won't be accepted. They're going to think it's stupid, da-da-da-da. And so for a lot of people, that's a stopper. You want to do something great. You want to do something fantastic, but that fear of what people will say, or what people will think becomes a stopper. How do you push past that?
Well,
because you have.
Yeah.
you had the thoughts about, what will people say, but you developed the course anyway. So how did what's that link? What's that link between the stopping thought and doing it anyway?
I start looking what's important to me. What I value is important to me. And what's important to me, oh my God, I wake up every day and I go to sleep with the same thought. What's important to me is making a difference. The fact that I know I can change someone's life, as little as, something as saying good morning, to show them appreciation, to teach them a skill. Like, that's important to me. And because I know that's important to me, I said, I'm going to push forward, and I'm going to make this course, because even if I can make a difference, I know there's 7 billion people on this planet, but if I can change 100 people in the time that I'm living here on this planet, then I'm golden. And that's what pushes me forward, because that is important to me.
Now, what do you say? That's an aha moment. I think that's a true light bulb moment, wanting to make a difference. And I think deep down we all do. But what do you say to the person who feels like they don't have a skill, they don't have a talent, they have nothing that anybody would want? What do you say?
Start building the knowledge. Build the competence. Okay. Because one of the things that we said to people, okay, that's okay. You don't have it. It doesn't mean that you cannot start today, this second, even in half an hour after the show ends.
Right. Exactly.
Literally go to Amazon.com. Go to, not that I'm promoting Amazon. I'm just saying, go somewhere. Go to the bookstore, something, and start learning about it.
Right.
And
absolutely. The internet is free for now, for right now anyway. And yes. There's so many courses, and a number of universities have courses that are free, so you can learn a language, and it doesn't cost you anything. I mean, there are all kinds of things that you can do at absolutely no cost. But I think you've really hit on the key of wanting to make a difference, being the motivator, and getting up off your duff and really doing something that's impactful, so that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think we are. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, last comment, I promise. So I've always said that if it's important to you, you will find the time. You will absolutely find the time. Like, I get it. I'm in that booth. Trust me, I have 5 other projects that are waiting for me. But I say, if this is important, you will make the time and you will create it. Okay, I'm done.
Right. No, I absolutely. We do find time for anything we feel is important. We say we're busy, but if you're seeing someone and they call, and say they want to take you out or something, somehow you find the time. You will find the time. If Idris Elba called you, you would find the time. For whoever you feel is important enough. Oh yeah. Suddenly your calendar magically opens. So, well, I think we're just about at the halfway mark. We're going to pause for station identification and to listen to a little bit more of the breakup song, and then we're going to come back with Chris and talk a little bit more about fear.
In case you didn't hear it, here it is again. Oh, fear, you don't own me. like me? Anybody needing fear to leave? If you don't know how to say it, sing along with me. Sing fear, you don't own me. There ain't no room in this story. And I ain't got time for you telling me what I'm not. Like you know me, well guess what? I know who I am. I know I'm strong, brave, and I am free. Got my own identity, so fear you will never be welcome here. Whoa. Goodbye, goodbye, fear. Whoa. You will never be welcome here.
And we are back. And that's what I'm hopeful. At the end of this series, we will all be able to say goodbye to fear. Goodbye. Don't need you. Move out. No longer need you. And we're back with Crizia Salgado and talking about fear and how she made the journey from a very difficult childhood to being an international speaker. And, Chris, you're still with us, right?
I am.
Okay, great. So we've got a few more minutes to talk, and I came across something that I think is an interesting way to look at fear when we're talking about fear of failure, and I think that's a stopper for a lot of us. I know it has been in my life. You know, there were a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I was very good at talking myself out of doing things. You know, there were things that I wanted, you know, or things that I wanted to accomplish at one point or another, and I would think to the end, well, you're not going to be successful, so why bother? You know, and then I'd just kind of step backwards from that. But Dr. Wayne Dwyer, who was a very prolific writer in the personal development space, has written a number of very, very interesting and helpful books, and one of the things that he suggests is that there's no such thing as failure. Failure is your opinion, and it's a judgment. And, you know, it's something that we decide if an outcome, an action that we took is a failure or not. And I think that's a really interesting perspective, an interesting way to look at it, you know. So he turns it kind of upside down and suggests you think about it this way. You can't fail. You cannot fail. You only produce results. So maybe you don't like the results. Maybe you have the opportunity to learn from the results, but you cannot fail. And, he uses the analogy of a baby who has to learn to sit up and has to learn to crawl and to learn to walk. And that, you know, there are very many bumps and bruises along the way, you know, because the baby doesn't stand up and start walking, but, you know, falls down many, many times, but continues to try. And the baby doesn't stop and say, well, that didn't work. I guess I just won't walk, you know, and I'm a failure at walking. And so he suggests that, you know, we take the same kind of attitude. Just get up, keep going. Get up and keep going. So, Chris, you have any thoughts on that? I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, no, I have always loved Wayne Dwyer. Wow,
yes.
Yeah. What I would say to overcoming fear, I know it's not easy, but I would say to really take a moment, you know, for a few minutes and really look at sort of like the flip coin, the flip side. Do you want to continue going forward with the fear and sort of be comfortable to where you're at, or flip the coin saying, no, I'm going to try and take this baby step and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, I did it. Oh, wait, let me take this another baby step and one step and another step. You know, and that's what I would suggest, sort of like just take it one step at a time. As what is that old saying? And I think you can help me with this one, saying like, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a excellent way of looking at it when you look at the end. If you're trying to accomplish something big, go to law school and you say, oh my God, it's so much money. It's 4 years if you're going at night. It's too long. I can't do it. Da 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 da. And then if you just take, actually, to tell you the truth, when I was in law school, there were some nights when I really wanted to quit. I mean, really, because I was a single mom. I was working full time. I was going to school at night, and I was so tired, that there were some days when I was literally, looking at the phone saying, I think I'm just going to call them tonight. And what I would do would be I'd kind of psych myself out. I'd say, okay, I'm going to go tonight, but if I still feel the same way tomorrow, then I'll quit. And I wasn't really thinking about quitting. It was more like, seeing if I could take a leave of absence. But, when you stop a trajectory like that, you don't go back. It's very uncommon, and they really don't like it. Once you start, you've got to be committed, So, but I think the one bite at a time is an excellent analogy to any big thing that you're trying to take on, instead of looking at the whole big picture of it. Let me just do this one step. Let me just do this one piece. Let me just develop this one course. Miss Salgado, let me just do this one thing, or let me develop the first part of the course, the first lesson in the course, So that's an interesting way of looking at it, And when we think about failure, I came across something else that was very interesting. A reporter asked Thomas Edison, how does it feel to have failed 25,000 times in trying to make a battery? And Thomas Edison looked at him and said, I haven't failed. Today, I know 25,000 ways that making a battery won't work. So there are all kinds of ways of sort of helping yourself to see things through a different lens. A lot of times I think we look at it in one way and we think that's it. That's the only way to look at it. I failed. This is not going to work. That's it. It's over. And I think that I think what you're suggesting is that you can take it in much smaller pieces in order to accomplish the goal.
Absolutely.
And even if you don't get the result that you wanted, instead of calling it a failure, you say, well, I've learned, what won't work, and I'll keep going until I find what does work.
Everything's a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Everything, literally everything. Yeah, everything. So, and you don't stop learning. You never stop learning. There's always something new to learn. Always something new.
And so, if you don't mind me saying,
go, please, go ahead.
Oh, if you don't mind me saying, one of the things I mentioned earlier is, so one of the things I constantly hear, well, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. And right before the show, I just finished telling someone, well, how much longer are you going to continue saying, I don't know any, I didn't know this. I didn't know this. It's sometimes you have to take the initial step and saying, like, you know what? I'm going to learn about it. Take the first step and actually pick up a book or go to the internet or something. Be active about it. Be proactive about it. And that's what I did. I didn't know about a lot of the stuff. Oh, my God, are you kidding me? And then until I said, like, no, I'm going to learn about it, because that's how you overcome the fear. At least that's one way. Is you start increasing your knowledge more and more. You build your competence.
I think that's excellent. And I think the step before that is making the decision that you're not going to give yourself a pass.
Absolutely, yeah. You
make the decision on the front side, I'm not going to live with this excuse that I can't do it. Because that's just not true. You know, but we're real good at making up excuses. I had a PhD in it, to tell you the truth. I could make up an excuse, and it sounded good, and it really resonated with me, and it was very believable, and it was really, really good. You know, I believed it. You know, I mean, I could make up an excuse for anything that I didn't want to do. You know, now did it serve me well? No. No, not really. But it felt good to me, you know. And so I think that's part of it, too. Sometimes we have to get out of our feelings. You know, you make up an excuse because I don't feel like it, you know. And I think sometimes our feelings get in the way of what we really need to do, you know. So fear and feelings, two things that keep us kind of stuck, you know. And my interest is in getting us past fear and feelings, you know. So you can still do it. Your feelings don't have to, you know, want to go along, but that's okay. You do it in spite of the feelings. That's okay. You don't have to like it. You don't have to be in love with it. You just do it anyway. You know.
As a joke, I always share. Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing fear. Okay, goodbye.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Thank you for sharing, right. Yeah. So, and, you know, but it actually, there are a lot of people who have studied this area and, you know, neuroscience, and they study the brain. And, you know, what they have found is that your brain, the whole point is that your brain wants to keep you safe. You know, your brain cannot tell the difference between an internal fear and an external fear. Whether it's a lion, tiger, and bear, or whether it's your fear of success. Your brain reads it all the same way. It's all fear. And so, you know, you get the adrenaline and all that the same kind of way as if it was a lion, tiger, or bear, you know. And so the physical response is the same. And I think that's what trips us up, because we read it as, oh, I can't do it. Oh, I'm frozen. Oh, you know, I'm feeling like this is too much. I can't do it, you know, as opposed to just acknowledging it as a feeling, saying, brain, thank you for keeping me safe. I appreciate it. And then, but I'm going to do it anyway. Absolutely. You know, but it's hard for us to move out of our comfort zone. That's very difficult sometimes.
Hey, I was scared coming on the show.
Yes. Well, you weren't alone, you know. But we did it anyway, right? You know, we're doing it anyway, you know. So, you know, we've got just a few minutes left, and I wanted to talk, and please, you know, I want you to chime in too, Chris, as we go along. The tools for the toolbox, you know, and my 3 solutions for fear, you know, and however you call it, whether you call it fear or your feelings or however you want to language it, you know, it's the things that stop you from accomplishing things that you know you can accomplish or things that you want to accomplish. And so my first tool is stop seeking fear where fear no longer exists. Stop seeking fear where fear no longer exists. There's some things that you know you've gotten past. You know you've grown in that area, but you still go back to familiar patterns and familiar ways, and you let them trip you up, and they stop you from progressing in ways that you really can. So don't look for the excuses. Don't look for the ways out. Well, I would do that, but you know, I've got a child at home, and, you know, that's why I'm not in college. Now, you know your child is 18 years old, you know, and barely home, you know. So stop seeking fear where fear no longer exists. You know, in other words, stop making excuses. That's number 1. Anything on that, Chris? Anything you want to add on that one? Stop seeking fear. Sometimes we look for it.
We do, and sometimes we don't, you know, consciously are aware of it. We become sort of like look for the pattern, and has that helped you? How has that been helping you? to sort of,
exactly.
okay, yeah.
Exactly. Okay. My second tool for your toolbox is every time you get a negative thought. Now, some of this means that you're going to have to think about what you're thinking about. You're going to have to acknowledge, your negative thoughts, your thought patterns, because, there's a constant stream of conversation in our heads all day, and sometimes we acknowledge it, sometimes we don't. So what I want you to do, this is a tool for the toolbox. Every time you get a negative thought about fear, replace it with 3 positive ones. Now, that can be scripture, that can be affirmations, whatever you choose. So here's an example. The thought comes in, I can't do this. I just can't do it. I can't do it. So replace that with 3 positive thoughts. And if you want to use scripture, I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. Greater is he who's in me than he that's in the world. Or third, I'm an overcomer. And if you start saying those things, and, your brain goes along with whatever you say, and the universe grants you what you say. You have what you say, not what you think, what you say. So start saying those positive things. And, your brain, your ego, everything will kind of go along with what you say. If you've convinced yourself that there's something that you just can't do, well, guess what? Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. And start, telling yourself that you can, and you'll be surprised at what opens up for you. Mm. Or if you say, I'm afraid, well, replace that with, I'm an overcomer. Or what we've talked about before, thank you, fear, for wanting to keep me safe, but I don't need you anymore. You're dismissed. Or you can say to it, fear is a giant. Speak directly to it. Fear, you're a giant, but giants must fall. So these are all things that you can say. You come up with your own. You can contact me on later. I'd be happy to share some more that I use. But it's important, I think, to become conscious of what you're thinking about and conscious of how you are responding to things without being consciously aware of it. If you're not consciously aware of fear, then you're acting out based on fear without really being conscious of the consequences of it. And so that's important, that you just take a moment and start studying, well, why am I doing this? If you catch yourself making excuses, wait, is this really true, or am I making an excuse because I'm afraid? Just start looking at things that way a little more closely. And then you want to remember also always the opposite of fear is not being bold. A lot of times you see people being like, we used to call them kind of braggadocious, kind of just out there, just kind of large and in charge and over the top, But the opposite of fear is not being bold, and it's not even being courageous. The opposite of fear is faith. It's faith. Perfect love casts out fear. So you don't have to, say I'm a soldier and I'm, if that's you, that's fine. But if you're kind of meek and mild and, you feel like fear just sort of overwhelms you sometimes, the word works. I'm here to tell you, and I'm not telling you what I read. I'm telling you what I know and what I've lived. The word works. If you're looking for a way to combat fear in your life or anything negative, get in the Word. And if you only know one word, say that one word. You say that every day. And say it out loud. Say it in your car. I think a lot of times when we talk, that brings me to prayer. Prayer is really a conversation. And I think, Jesus calls us his friend. And so I think, when you have a friend, you talk to them the way Chris and I have been talking in this conversation, in this program today. And, I invite you to invite more prayer into your life and to acknowledge, Christ invited us to give him our burdens. So I invite you to give him fear. Jesus, I don't need this anymore. I'd like to give this one back to you. And in exchange, I'll take your peace. Can we make a swap? I don't need this is not working for me anymore. But you have to be conscious of it, And I'm not being, flip about it, but it does work. And I think sometimes we approach our relationship to God in a way that doesn't really serve us because we don't really know him. We know about him, and we know what our traditions are, and we know the whole program in church, but we don't know him. If he walked into church today, will we recognize him? So I think that's important that we develop the relationship. We move past fear. We find the things that don't serve us, that have kept us trapped for so long, and move into something that's far, far more positive. So in these last couple of minutes, this is what the main thought that I want to leave with you today. And this is simple, but you might want to write this one down. I like the cave one also, But this thought, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Everything you want. Think about that. I want you to just let that resonate with you for a second. Everything you want. You want more money. You want more of a social life. You want more education. You want, what is it that you want? Well, whatever that want is, all of that is on the other side of fear. So, Chris, you have any final words for us today? Any thoughts?
So I love to say this statement to people, and some people get it, some others don't, and that's okay, But eventually they will get it. They're like, oh, that's what you were trying to say. But essentially is whatever project you decide to tackle, even if it means as little as cleaning your room. Whatever the project may be, it could be you decide to get your bachelor's degree, whatever project, or changing a new career, is to first imagine you're already there, already happened. It already has happened. What would that look like? What would that look like? And you start writing it down. It already happened. What would that look like? And then you'll see your baby steps. So I'll leave you with that.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And, if you think about it and you think about God being outside of time, and, you can go, what you're suggesting, I think, is that you go outside of time and look at something as if it's already there. And then you start seeing the steps to how to get there, which eliminates the overwhelm, it eliminates the excuses, it eliminates the fear. It's just you and the thing that you're trying to accomplish, and there are no barriers. You've eliminated all the barriers, everything that's in the way. Wow. So on that note, my goodness, our time has flown. I really have appreciated all the insight from my dear friend Chris Salgado. I hope the audience has gotten something out of this. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week. We'll have the tea ready, 4 o'clock next Saturday, Tea Time with Carol. You all be blessed. Thank you so much. And take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.